America, we're looking at a moment that challenges the very values that built our nation. Because what happened in London this Christmas isn't just about carols or holiday lights, it's about respect, faith, and the traditions that define a culture. Videos circulating show London Mayor Sadiq Khan, the city's first Muslim mayor, refusing to sing the words "Christ is King" and remaining silent during "Christ is Born" at public Christmas events. Some see it as a deliberate rejection of Christian tradition. Others claim he was trying to respect his own faith. But here's the hard truth. When leaders hesitate to honor the faith of the majority, it sends a message, one that undermines tradition, erodes values, and sparks division. This isn't just a London story. It's a warning for every nation that holds faith, family, and heritage sacred. If you care about defending Christian values, standing for tradition, and preserving the moral foundation of society, you need to watch this video. Hit like, subscribe, and stay with me. Because tonight, we're breaking down a moment that reminds us why faith, courage, and tradition must never be optional. To understand why what happened in London matters, and why it sent shockwaves across politics, culture, and identity debates, you need to see it in historical and civilizational context. This wasn't just a Christmas carol event, it was a confrontation over who gets to define public space, collective memory, and national tradition in one of the West's oldest capitals. For centuries, Christmas has been more than a holiday in the United Kingdom. It has been a cultural cornerstone, rooted in Christian heritage, embedded in law, tradition, and civic life. Public holidays, national ceremonies, even the calendar itself reflect that inheritance. As Conservative MP Andrew Rosendale put it, "Our Christian traditions are not optional. They are the framework that holds society together." But over the past generation, Europe's cultural landscape has shifted dramatically. Secularization, immigration, and multicultural policies have reshaped public life. In major cities, London in particular, religious symbols have become contested terrain. Some see them as a treasured inheritance. Others see them as exclusive markers in a society now celebrating diversity at the expense of tradition. Into this charged environment stepped one of the West's most visible political figures. Sadiq Khan, a Muslim mayor of one of the world's most diverse cities, has publicly called on Londoners to be inspired by the teachings of Jesus, who urged us to love thy neighbor. He has encouraged kindness, inclusivity, and communal unity at Christmas. Yet Khan also presides over a political climate where religion and public identity are daily flashpoints. His office spends millions on programs to combat hate, intolerance, and extremism across London. This framing, Christmas as one tradition among many, set the stage for tension. Enter Tommy Robinson, a figure whose past is steeped in controversy. Known for far-right activism and mass demonstrations in London, Robinson has in recent years invoked Christianity as a core part of his public persona. When he announced a Christmas Carol event in Westminster to put Christ back into Christmas, it was more than a social gathering. It was a statement, a reminder that cultural memory and faith remain central to national identity. Before the event, senior Church of England figures publicly distanced themselves, warning against the use of Christian symbols to advance political agendas. "Christmas belongs to all of us," they said, urging compassion, welcome, and the traditional message of hospitality. That ecclesiastical response highlighted a deeper tension within Western Christianity itself. Institutional leaders concerned about political polarization face a grassroots movement eager to see faith affirmed publicly. Predictably, the announcement was met with warnings of conflict. Police braced for protests and counter-protests. Critics argued the gathering could inflame xenophobia or racism. Commentators debated whether this was a simple holiday service or a form of cultural nationalism. Then, December 13th arrived. Roughly 1,000 people gathered in Westminster. No riots, no chaos, no violence, just carols, candlelight, families standing together, tradition quietly affirmed in the heart of the capital. What does this moment tell us? It reflects a broader cultural realignment in the West, one in which traditional religious identity is no longer confined to private spaces. Faith is resurfacing publicly, often in ways that challenge secular assumptions about the role of religion in civic life. This is not nostalgia, it is a response to larger forces: migration, cultural change, identity politics, and debates over national heritage. London's Christmas gathering was not an isolated incident. It is part of a continental pattern: citizens asserting cultural identity publicly, reshaping political and social discourse, and forcing institutions to reckon with the historical foundations of their own societies. Stay with me, because in the next section, we'll break down what London's Christmas clash really reveals about the future of Western culture, public faith, and the preservation of national identity. Tradition does not stay quiet when it is challenged. It pushes back, it asserts itself. And when it is questioned, it sparks debate, tension, and sometimes confrontation. What happened in London was not just a Christmas carol. It was a collision, a test of courage, identity, and the public role of faith. Sadiq Khan, the mayor, represented the forces of accommodation and political caution, a city leader tasked with balancing diversity, avoiding offense, and managing the optics of public space. He remained visibly hesitant during carols like Christ is Born, an awkward silence that instantly became a symbol. Some saw it as a sign of respect for his own beliefs. Others saw it as a snub to centuries of Christian tradition. On the other side stood citizens, grassroots believers, and cultural activists like Tommy Robinson, determined to affirm what they saw as under threat: the public presence of their faith. He framed his event simply: we are here to put Christ back into Christmas. Not for politics alone, but for culture.
It's a Merry Christmas from myself and my team at Urban.
The tension was palpable. Analysts, church leaders, and media commentators debated endlessly. Was this a holiday service or a declaration? Was public faith an inclusive right or a flashpoint for division? Police prepared for protests and counter-protests. Fear and caution hung over Westminster like winter fog. And yet, when the day came, the outcome defied expectations. No chaos erupted, no violent confrontations. Instead, there were carols, candlelight, families standing together, ordinary citizens quietly asserting the extraordinary. Their faith and heritage matter. This moment illuminates a broader truth. Culture, like a river, does not flow backward quietly when dammed. It finds cracks, leaks, and channels, asserting itself wherever it can. And when tradition is treated as controversial, citizens do not vanish. They speak louder. Ask yourself this: when the public square no longer reflects your values, do you retreat, or do you stand and reclaim it? Do you allow leaders who silence your heritage to set the precedent, or do you remind them, respectfully but firmly, who you are and what you believe? This clash in London also exposes a moral divide. On one side, the managerial elite, cautious, politically correct, fearful of offense. On the other, ordinary citizens rooted in history, guided by faith, and unwilling to let public space erase their identity. And that is where the stakes get personal. Faith in the public square is not abstract. It is the connective tissue of families, communities, and nations. When it is questioned, when it is muted, the very foundations of society tremble. For patriots, for conservatives, for every American who treasures faith, family, and freedom, the message is clear. Cultural passivity is not an option. Silence is not neutral. When tradition is pushed to the margins abroad, the warning echoes at home. And this is where you come in. Stand with your heritage. Support public expressions of faith. Cherish your history, because when ordinary people assert what is sacred to them, they remind the world and their leaders that liberty is not abstract. It is lived. It is practiced. It is defended. London showed us that faith can survive public scrutiny. But it also showed that silence, hesitation, and compromise invite cultural erosion. The battle for the public square is ongoing, and the next move is ours to make. So ask yourself, will you retreat when tradition is questioned, or will you assert what is rightfully yours, boldly, publicly, and without apology? Hit like if you believe in defending faith and tradition. Subscribe to stay informed, because this fight for cultural identity is only just beginning. As the dust settles on London's Christmas controversy, the implications stretch far beyond carols and holiday lights. This was not just an awkward moment at a festive event. It was a clash over who gets to define public space, cultural memory, and national identity. Videos showing Muslim London Mayor Sadiq Khan appearing uneasy or silent during key Christian lyrics, especially lines like "Christ is born, the newborn king," struck a nerve across social media. Critics saw it as a distancing from the very heart of Christmas. Supporters argued he was navigating a diverse city without compromising his own faith. But this wasn't random noise. It exposed a deeper fault line, one every free society faces. How do public leaders honor majority traditions while respecting minority beliefs? And more importantly, how does a nation safeguard its heritage without surrendering it to political correctness? From a civic perspective, this is fundamental. Identity politics begins long before elections. It begins with symbols, rituals, and the moments that unite communities. When leaders hesitate during these moments, they send a signal, not just about personal comfort, but about how society values tradition itself. In London, the uproar came because many felt a celebration deeply rooted in Christian heritage was treated as negotiable rather than foundational. This perception was amplified not by extremists, but by ordinary citizens who saw the hesitation and shared it widely. History is instructive. Consider America's early republic. Our founders separated the establishment of church from the practice of faith, but they never separated faith from civic life. Christianity and shared moral values provided the scaffolding for liberty, cohesion, and public virtue. Rituals, holidays, and civic ceremonies weren't optional. They were the glue that held a fledgling nation together. When a society begins to retreat from its own heritage, even symbolically, the consequences ripple outward. Cultural authority shifts from tradition to technocracy. Shared narratives give way to managerial neutrality. Public confidence in heritage erodes. That's why Khan's hesitation mattered. It wasn't just social media chatter. It was a collective sense that something foundational was being reframed as inconvenient. The strategic lesson is clear. A society that publicly affirms its core traditions sustains cohesion. A society that sidelines them quietly invites fragmentation. This is not hostility toward other faiths. It is about defending a shared cultural foundation, one that has shaped laws, holidays, and public life for generations. When that foundation is treated as optional, two consequences follow. First, citizens lose trust in institutions meant to represent them. They feel their traditions are unwelcome, not just unrepresented. Second, cultural authority shifts from lived tradition to curated neutrality. And neutral spaces, over time, become spaces where nothing truly rooted can take hold. For Americans, the lesson is urgent. Faith, tradition, and historical values are not relics of the past. They are anchors of identity in an era of rapid change. When leaders retreat from honoring those anchors, even symbolically, they send a signal. Heritage is negotiable, not foundational. For patriots, conservatives, and every citizen who values the moral architecture of a nation, the takeaway is stark and unambiguous. Public faith matters. Historical tradition matters. Cultural continuity matters. These are not optional extras. They are the bedrock of social cohesion, public confidence, and national identity. When citizens see hesitation in celebrating tradition, they do not shrug, they react. They speak out. They defend what endures. That is exactly what we saw in London. This controversy is not a minor cultural footnote. It is a case study in the resilience of tradition and the cost of hesitation. Because when a society doubts its rituals, it does not stay the same. It transforms. And not always in ways that preserve the heritage that built it. The question for Americans, for anyone who cherishes faith, family, and tradition, is clear. Will we stand firm in affirming the values that sustain our society? Or will we allow them to be reframed as inconvenient under the guise of neutrality? Because the strength of a nation is not measured by institutions alone. It is measured by the confidence its people have in the values that uphold it. What happened in London is not just a festival. It is a signal, a warning, a moral inflection point. Culture does not retreat quietly. Tradition does not fade by decree. And freedom of conscience survives only when it is asserted. When the public square is ceded to fear or to elites who reframe tradition as taboo, something deeper is at risk. The very soul of a nation. Labeling a Christmas celebration as controversial is not abstract theory. It is a symptom of a broader cultural shift, one where shared heritage is chastised, not celebrated, and citizens are told to silence what they most deeply value. The lesson is stark. A country that cannot acknowledge its own traditions publicly cannot defend the idea of national unity. Culture, memory, and belief are the connective tissue of a society, stronger than any statute, deeper than any policy. When that tissue frays, social cohesion unravels. Look to history. America's founders invoked the laws of nature and nature's God in the Declaration of Independence. They understood that faith in public and private is foundational to civic virtue. Our national motto, "In God We Trust," was never an afterthought. It was a declaration of a people who knew liberty is rooted in moral order. Today, the stakes are just as high. America faces forces that would push faith and tradition into the shadows, not through overt force, but through redefinition. Sacred symbols are recast as exclusionary. Public expressions of belief are labeled controversial. Heritage becomes something to apologize for rather than celebrate. And here is where the lesson becomes personal. Faith in the public square is not optional. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are not abstract ideals. They are lived experiences grounded in shared values. Safety at home, cultural, spiritual, and social, is not guaranteed. It relies on communities willing to stand together, not retreat in fear. Economic independence cannot thrive in a culture that devalues its own history. Families deserve more than opportunity. They deserve a context where identity and ambition reinforce each other. Sovereignty of culture matters as much as sovereignty of borders. A nation without a clear sense of itself is a nation at risk of dissolution. Accountable governance means leaders who protect not just rights, but heritage, not just diversity, but continuity. The London event, the backlash it sparked, and the peaceful assertion of citizens illustrate a fundamental truth. When people are told they cannot publicly affirm who they are, they eventually assert it more boldly. Restriction does not extinguish identity, it amplifies it. Patriots, conservatives, and every American who cherishes faith, family, and freedom must take note. Complacency is a luxury we cannot afford. We must act morally, culturally, and politically to defend the foundations of our society. Tradition is not to be shunned. It is a pillar of collective identity. Public expressions of faith are not anomalies. They are central to the American story. History does not wait. Lessons ignored abroad do not stay abroad. Surrender of tradition in one capital becomes precedent in another. The bigger question is clear. Will America defend its heritage publicly, confidently, and without apology? Or will we allow cultural inheritance to be pushed to the margins, leaving future generations hollowed of meaning? This is a moral and cultural turning point. The choices we make now about tradition, public faith, and what we value will define our nation for decades to come. Heritage is not optional. Public faith is not peripheral. The identity of a nation is not something to be diffused or dismissed. If America is to remain secure, united, and free, we must remember who we are, where we came from, and what we stand for, before others define it for us. If you found this analysis compelling, don't stop now. The story of London Christmas and the fight for cultural identity is just one piece of a much larger narrative. A narrative about the values that define America, the traditions worth defending, and the cultural and political forces shaping our future. Click on the next video. Stay alert. Understand the full picture before complacency sets in. Knowledge is power, and in the years ahead, it could be the difference between preserving our heritage or watching it erode. Thank you for watching. I'll see you there.